Hello, my favorite English students. It is your favorite English teacher here, Amy Joy, and in today's video, we are going to talk about causative verbs. Now, just a reminder, causative verbs are verbs that mean someone causes something to happen. And typically, when my students first learn causative verbs, they learn about 7 to 8, including have, help, make, let, get, and cause. But today, I am going to share with you 25 causative verbs, and I will review their grammar along with their meaning and some common mistakes that I see my students make. At the end of this video, I have an error correction section so that you can practice and make sure that you can avoid the mistakes that I see my students make. So, let's get started. So to give you some context, my class and we were discussing expectations that parents have of their children. And my students said the following sentences. My mom called my teacher and got her change my grade. In high school, my parents encouraged me taking fewer classes because I was very stressed. And some strict parents let their children study on the weekends. So all three of these sentences have a causative verb, but there is a little mistake in each sentence. In the first two, the mistake is related to the form or the grammar of the verb. And in the third sentence, we see a problem with the meaning or the definition of the causative verb. So let's take a look at both the grammar and the meaning of certain causative verbs so we can avoid these mistakes. So the difficult thing about causative verbs is that they always have another verb after them. And depending on the causative verb, the form of the second verb will be different. So let's take a look at 4 examples and you can see what I mean. Professors often hire TAs to grade student work. Our causative verb is hire and it is followed by the verb to grade. Here we see to and grade. This is called the infinitive form of the verb. Number 2, having TAs helps professors to have more free time for research and publishing materials. Our causative verb is helps, and it is followed by the verb to have. Again, we see the infinitive form of the verb, to have. Number 3, the TA made everyone introduce themselves on the first day of class. Here we see the causative verb made followed by the verb introduce. Here we do not see the infinitive form. Here we use the base form of the verb introduce. We did not say to introduce. So the TA made everyone introduce themselves. And number 4, the professor had the TA review the material before the exam. Our causative is the verb had, and that is also followed by the base form of the following verb, review. We did not say had the TA to review, we just said had the TA review the material. So you can see from these examples that different causative verbs are followed by different forms of the verbs that follow them. So most causative verbs are actually followed by the infinitive of the verb that follows them. And remember, the infinitive form of a verb is just the verb with to in front of it. So in our example, we said that professors hire TAs to grade. And here I have 21 causative verbs that use the infinitive after it. Now, it can be really hard to just memorize this list. So what I like to tell my students to do is to memorize these verbs with the infinitive attached to it. So allow someone to do something, ask someone to do something, cause someone to do something. So if you can remember the verb with the to next to it, it will come more naturally and you will start to automatically use the correct verb form after the causative. So like I said, most causative verbs are followed by the infinitive form, but there are just 4 that take the base form. And those four are have, help, let, and make. So when memorizing these, again, it can be useful to memorize them with the base verb attached. For example, have someone do something, help someone do something, let someone do something, and make someone do something. And another thing you'll notice is that we never used the ing form of the second verb. We are only deciding between the infinitive with the to or the base form of the verb. So another common mistake that my students make is using the ing form. But for causative verbs, you will not be using ing for the second verb. So just to make it easy for you, I've got both lists here side by side, and you can actually see that one verb is put in both charts. And that verb is help. So help is a flexible verb, and you can actually use the infinitive or the base verb after it. So this one you don't really have to memorize. And also, just so you know, there is no difference in meaning if you choose the infinitive or the base verb after help. The meaning will be exactly the same. And before we move on to the meaning of certain causative verbs, if you have learned something new so far or you have enjoyed this video, I want to remind you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification button so that YouTube will send my video to more students. I work really hard on these, and I would just really appreciate your support. So thank you. And just to continue helping you remember all of these causatives, I have put them into certain categories. For example, we see some positive causative verbs like encourage, help, and motivate. And some causative verbs are more related to persuasion. For example, to convince someone to do something, get someone to do something, persuade someone to do something, and want someone to do something. And next, we have some more serious, formal, academic, legal causative verbs like force, mandate, make, obligate, order, and require someone to do something. And just a reminder, all of these use the infinitive after it, except for make. Make will take the base verb after it. Make someone do something. Then we have some kind of work-related causatives, like hire someone to do something, pay someone to do something, and train someone to do something. And then lastly, we've got some causatives related to giving permission. For example, allow someone to do something, let someone do something, and permit someone to do something. So speaking of the meaning of different causative verbs, here I have 3 different verbs that tend to cause confusion for my students. They are let, have, and get. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Here I have 3 sentences, and they all have a mistake with the meaning of let. The first one says, some strict parents let their children study on weekends. Another sentence says, my parents often highlight how much they have sacrificed for me, which lets me have a feeling of owing them something. And this one, last semester I had a lot of courses, which let me feel stressed. So these sentences actually all have perfect grammar, but the mistake is related to the meaning of let. The word let actually means to give permission or to allow someone to do something. It does not mean to cause or to make or to force, and so it should only be used when the recipient wants to do something. For example, parents let their children have candy. The kids want to have the candy and the parents give them permission. Sometimes I let my students leave early. They want to leave early and I give them permission. I allow them to leave early. When you think about giving permission, that person usually wants to do the thing you are allowing. However, my students tend to use it like to cause or to make something happen. In these examples, the recipient doesn't really want the thing that is being allowed or permitted. Do children really want to study on weekends? No. So why would their parents give them permission to do something that they don't want to do? Similarly, do you want to have a feeling of owing something to someone? No, that's kind of a negative feeling, and you wouldn't want permission to feel that way. So it doesn't really make sense. And in the last one, do you want to feel stressed? Does anybody want to feel stressed? No, I don't think so. So it's kind of odd or strange to say that it let me feel stressed. It gave me permission to feel stressed because I don't want to feel that way. So let's take a moment and correct these sentences using different causative verbs. So for number 1, I might say, some strict parents force their children to study on weekends. Number 2, my parents often highlight how much they have sacrificed for me, which causes me to have a feeling of owing them something. And the last one, last semester I had a lot of courses, which made me feel stressed. So again, let does not mean to force, to make, to cause. It's usually a positive thing that someone wants to do and is then given permission. Now, the next verb that I see students struggle with is have someone do something. To have someone do something means to direct, to ask, or to hire someone to do something. So let's take a look at a few examples. My parents had me repeat first grade because I was the youngest in the class. So my parents directed me to do something. They required me to do something. They asked me to do something. And the second one, Amy Joy had her students complete a group project for the final. I directed my students, I asked my students, I required my students to complete a group project. Number 3, my biology professor had our TA lead the lab. He hired the TA to lead our lab. He directed, he asked the TA to lead our lab. And lastly, I had a tutor help me prepare for the midterm. I hired him, I paid him, I asked him, I directed him to prepare me for the midterm. This one is kind of difficult because the verb have already has so many meanings, but this is one of them, and I hope these examples clarify the meaning. Now, the last one is a bit easier. To get someone to do something means to convince someone to do something. Now, I think this one causes my students confusion because there are so many definitions of the word get, but one of those meanings is to convince someone. So here are some examples. Like we saw at the beginning, my mom called my teacher and got her to change my grade. My mom convinced my teacher to change my grade. I don't recommend having your mom call your teacher, but in this example, my student's mom called my student's teacher and got the teacher or convinced the teacher to change her daughter's grade. The next one, our class got our teacher to change the due date of the essay. Our class convinced our teacher to change the due date. And lastly, my friend Michelle got me to do a cardio fitness class with her. This is a true story, and I hated the class. I do not like doing cardio, but she convinced me. I did not want to go, but she got me to go to the fitness class. Okay, let's go ahead and practice. I am going to give you 10 sentences, and each sentence has 1 or 2 errors, all related to causative verbs. Some have a mistake with the meaning, and some have a mistake with the grammar. Once you're done, I will go over the answers with you. See you when you're finished. Okay, number 1, American parents usually let their children to develop their interests. This sentence has correct meaning, but the grammar is wrong. We need to say, American parents usually let their children develop. We need the base verb after the word let, not the infinitive. Number 2, my father helped my brother studying. Here we see a problem with grammar. We need to say, my father helped my brother study or to study. Number 3, I let my parents feel disappointed when I changed my major from pre-bio to sociology. Do you think this person's parents wanted to feel disappointed? No. So why would we give them permission? Why would we let them feel disappointed? We need to say, I made my parents feel disappointed. Or, I caused my parents to feel disappointed. Depending on the causative verb you choose, you will also have to change the second verb to either the infinitive or the base verb, whichever one is appropriate. Number 4, my bad grade caused my parents yelling at me. Here we have a problem with the form or the grammar. My bad grade caused my parents to yell at me. Cause someone to do something. Number 5, sometimes students have their college counselor to read their application essays before applying. Here we've got a problem with grammar. We need to say, have their college counselor read their application essays. Have someone do something. Number 6 has 2 mistakes. Some parents force their children to take extra classes and make their children practice instruments they are not interested in. So here we can see one problem with grammar and the other problem with meaning. Do students want to practice instruments they are not interested in? No. So we should not give them permission to do something they don't want to do. So we are going to say, make their children practice instruments, not let them practice. Number 7, Google hires engineers to create the best mobile applications. Number 8, laws in the US obligate therapists to keep patient information confidential. Here we see that formal term obligate, and we say obligate someone to do something. Number 9, we paid a professional to install new floors in our home. We paid someone to do something. And the last one, my personal trainer encourages me to eat well. Encourage someone to do something, not encourage someone doing something. Good job, everybody. I hope you got all of those right. And if you feel like you need even more practice, go ahead and in the comments below, tell me about a time that someone encouraged you to do something, motivated you to do something, required you to do something, got you to do something, or made you do something, and you can practice more in the comments below. I will definitely reply, and I would be so excited to see you practicing your English. All right, well, that's all for today, and I will see you next time. Bye.